The sirens don't sound the way you imagined. They're not dramatic, not cinematic. They're thin and distant, like a tired alarm clock you've already learned to ignore. But that morning, you don't ignore them, because the first explosion follows right after. You're in Pedro's boots now. The smell of oil and rust still clings to his hands. Your hands, when the ground trembles. The old garage where you spent years fixing engines suddenly feels like a cardboard box in a storm. A city that yesterday complained about traffic and late payments is now a place where the only thing that matters is, how long can you hold on? Your paycheck was already tight. Debts already circled your thoughts at night. Groceries, rent, that loan you swore you'd pay off as soon as things got better. But things didn't get better. They got louder, brighter, more dangerous. In chaos, money moves faster than bullets. Shops close. Prices jump overnight. The boss whispers, "I can't pay you this month, maybe next." You look at your empty wallet, your thinning pantry. The math doesn't add up anymore. Survival never waits for payday. Then comes the offer. A closed warehouse on the outskirts of the city. No uniforms, no flags. Just a man with calm eyes and clean shoes, offering cash that sounds almost unreal for simple repairs. Too good to refuse. Too good to question. You say yes before your conscience finishes its sentence. But here's where your story begins to split. Because as you follow Pedro into that warehouse, into that world of crates with no labels and engines that were never meant for cars, you'll see something familiar. The way fear pushes people into terrible deals. The way desperation makes shortcuts feel logical. The way not tracking anything, no numbers, no dates, no real plan, turns life into permanent crisis mode. Before we step further into this battlefield, pause for a second. What's your version of this war right now? Is it a credit card that never goes down? A loan you regret? That constant anxiety at the end of every month? Tell me in the comments. What's your biggest financial pain today? If you want to walk through this story and quietly rebuild your own strategy along the way, stick around and subscribe. The real escape starts in the next chapter. You're standing in Pedro's workshop the night the sirens don't stop. The city used to hum with a familiar soundtrack. Rattling buses, distant music, Pedro's tools clinking against stubborn bolts. Money was never abundant, but it was predictable. Fix an engine, get paid. Pay the landlord, buy some groceries, maybe save a little if nothing broke that month. But tonight, the hum is gone. Instead, there's a low, constant tension in the air. You feel it in Pedro's chest as he counts the cash in his hand, and then counts it again. It doesn't change. It's still not enough. Prices have exploded overnight. Bread costs what meat used to. Gas is a luxury. Customers stop coming, not because they don't need repairs, but because they can't afford to fix anything. They're in survival mode. And so is Pedro. You watch him open a small notebook where he once scribbled parts lists and repair notes. Now it's turning into something else. A page of red circles and angry numbers. Rent, food, debts, the upcoming payment he's already laid on. He does what you've probably done in quieter moments. A quick mental juggling act. If I delay this, maybe I can pay that. If I borrow here, I can breathe there. If nothing bad happens this week, maybe I'll be okay. But something always happens. The lights flicker. Another explosion echoes far away. Pedro's hand tightens around the last few bills he has left. It's not just lack of money. It's lack of control, of certainty, of any kind of plan beyond survive this month and pray the next one is kinder. That's when the knock comes. Heavy, confident. The kind of knock that brings offers you're not supposed to refuse. A man steps in, perfectly calm in a city on fire. No uniform, no badge, no official anything. Just a tailored jacket, polished shoes, and the soft scent of expensive cologne that doesn't belong anywhere near this neighborhood. He smiles at Pedro. I heard you're good with engines. And I pay very, very well. As you watch Pedro hesitate, let me ask you, have you ever been so financially cornered that a clearly dangerous opportunity suddenly felt reasonable? If this story is already touching a nerve, stay with it. Because what Pedro chooses next might look a lot like choices you've made, with money, with work, with risk. And buried in his mess, there are clues for how you can rebuild your own financial battlefield into something safer, calmer, and finally under your control. You don't notice, at first, how the war changes the sound of the streets. Engines used to be your soundtrack. Old trucks coughing, scooters whining, generators grumbling in the distance. Now, in Pedro's world, the baseline is different. It's the heavy thud of military tires, the distant crack of gunfire, the nervous whisper of people bargaining for food instead of haggling over car repairs. You feel it in Pedro's chest before you feel it in your own. That quiet panic when numbers begin to rebel. Rent late. Electricity doubled. Bread priced like gold. The workshop that once kept him afloat is now a leaking boat in a rising sea. Clients stop coming, not because they don't need him, but because they can't pay him. That's when the offer appears. Not in some villain's lair. In a back room that smells of oil and metal, with a man who looks more like a tired businessman than a criminal. No uniform. No ideology. Just a promise. Steady money, better than anything you're making now. All you have to do is fix the machines. No questions. You watch Pedro hesitate. You feel that same hesitation you felt before, staring at a credit offer, a risk-free investment, a job that paid well but scraped at your values. You know the script. It's only for a while. Just until things calm down. I don't really have a choice. Pedro takes the job, and at first, it feels like relief. Cash in his hands. Food on the table. Debts paused instead of growing. For a brief, fragile moment, survival feels like victory. But the warehouse is too quiet. The guards too alert. The parts too specific. As you follow Pedro deeper into that place, you can almost feel the same question knocking on your own door. How many times have you traded peace of mind for short-term relief with your money? If this story is striking a nerve, stay with Pedro a little longer. What too good to refuse offer is sitting in your life right now? If you want to see where his next choice leads, and what it means for your own finances, stick around for the next chapter. You're back in the warehouse the next day, but something in you has shifted. The smell of oil, metal shavings, and burned wiring feels heavier now that you know what these machines do. You walk past crates stamped with numbers you don't recognize. Only now you pay attention to them. Codes, dates, routes. Before, they were background noise. Now, they look like a ledger written in steel. You open your battered notebook, the same one you used to jot down engine specs and customer debts back at the small shop. For the first time, you don't just repair, you record. One page, serial numbers. Next page, delivery dates. Another, quantities, destinations, vague comments from hurried men in dark jackets. You're still just a mechanic on paper, but in your mind you've become something else, an auditor trapped inside a crime scene. As the days pass, a pattern starts to appear. The more intense the bombing outside, the more orders come in. The emptier the markets, the fuller the warehouse. When people outside lose everything, someone in here gains more. That realization hits you harder than the distant explosions. You think of your own life before all this. The times you didn't want to look at your bank app. The unopened bills shoved into drawers. The "I'll check later" that turned into "I don't even know how bad it is anymore." Back then, not tracking felt like protection. If you didn't see the numbers, maybe the problem wasn't so big. But here, in this place where war is a business, you see the opposite truth. Whoever tracks, controls. Whoever counts, decides. Whoever ignores, is used. So you do what very few people ever do with their own money. You face every number. You make a quiet pact with yourself. No more, I don't know. No more, I think it's around, you will know. Tell me, in your real life, what's the number you've been too afraid to look at? Your total debt, your monthly spending, or how little you've saved? If this story is hitting close to home, stay with me. In the next part, you'll see how Pedro starts turning this cold, brutal logic into the very framework that will set him free, and that can help you rebuild your own finances from the ground up. You don't sleep that night. Those numbers you've been scribbling in the dark, dates, names, routes, payments, they don't feel like notes anymore. They feel like a map of how money moves when nobody is watching. And you're not just repairing engines now, you're watching how power gets built. You notice it first in the invoices. The same shipment number appears going in and out. Different names, different buyers, same broker. He's not choosing a side. He's choosing a margin. You see how he always gets paid twice. Once to solve a problem, again to fix the damage caused by the solution. It hits you. This is what it looks like when someone designs life so they never run out of cash, no matter how bad things get. That thought stays with you longer than it should. In the quiet between explosions, you start doing with your life what he does with war. Tracking flows, reducing risk, thinking 3 steps ahead. Not because you admire him, but because you're tired of being the one who pays the bill at the end. You list your own battles: rent, food, the medicine your mother might need, old debts you've been pretending don't exist. For the first time, you stop guessing. You put numbers next to each fear. You see that some of your choices were made like gunfire: fast, loud, emotional. A quick loan here, a just this once purchase there. And every just this once turned into another chain you're now dragging through this broken city. In the warehouse, surrounded by metal and oil, you understand a brutal truth. Someone is always planning. If it's not you, it's someone who profits from your chaos. You decide you won't live like that anymore. You won't be the one who reacts. You'll be the one who prepares. If you're honest, where in your life today are you still reacting instead of planning, especially with your money? If this story is poking at something real in you, keep walking with Pedro. There's a way out of this battlefield, and you don't have to figure it out alone. You don't sleep that night. Not after what you saw. You sit at the small wooden table, the same one where you once spread out overdue bills and prayed the numbers would magically shrink. Now it's covered with something else: routes, dates, quantities, names coded in initials. Pedro's notebook. You flip through the pages, and you realize this is not just a record of work. It's a map of a silent war. Every crate delivered, every special part installed, every payment received. It's all there, carefully tracked, cold, precise. For a moment, you feel sick. Then you feel something else: clarity. Because for the first time, you see how power hides in organization. The broker doesn't win just because he's cruel. He wins because he tracks everything. You think of your own life. Your debts you roughly know. Your expenses you kinda remember. That, "I think I can afford it," instead of, "I've checked the numbers." Pedro didn't think tracking would matter, either, until he saw what happened when someone used it with intention. So he turns the notebook against the system that created it. First, he lists everything he owes. No rounding, no guessing. Then, he separates what must be paid now from what can be negotiated later. Next, he looks at every source of income, even the tiny ones that feel irrelevant. The chaos of his life becomes the structure. Ugly, painful, but visible. Because what you can see, you can move. What you can measure, you can change. You watch him breathe differently as the numbers start to make sense. He's still in danger. Nothing is magically solved. But he's no longer blind. And there, in the flickering light of that kitchen, another question hangs in the air. This time for you. Where are your numbers hiding? If you had to open your own or notebook today, would it be blank, confusing, or brutally honest? Tell me, what's the one financial number you've been avoiding looking at? If this story is hitting close to home, stay with it. The next steps in Pedro's escape might be the exact structure you've been missing. You sit there, the video paused, Pedro's story hanging in midair like dust in a shaft of light. Because now, finally, you see it. Every move the arms broker made. Isn't that different from the way the world plays with your money? He never bet on just one side. He always had a backup. He knew exactly what was coming in, what was going out, and what it would cost if everything exploded. You, on the other hand, were taught something else: hope for the best. Work hard, and it will all work out. Just don't look at the bill this month. Pedro started to survive the moment he did what you keep postponing. He stopped moving on instinct and started moving on information. He tracked. He counted. He faced the ugly numbers. And that's when the war changed for him. That's your turning point too. Not a raise. Not a miracle. Not a sudden lottery of opportunities. But the quiet, almost boring decision to say, from today on, every cent has a name and a mission. You're not in a warehouse surrounded by weapons parts, but you are surrounded by contracts, bills, subscriptions, habits. Each one is silently taking a piece of your future. Pedro's ledger became his escape map. Your budget can become the same. A list of debts that stop being impossible and become a sequence. A small, stubborn emergency reserve that keeps life from collapsing at the first unexpected hit. A plan for growth so you're not living in permanent financial war. If this story is hitting somewhere uncomfortable, that's good. It means you've found your battlefield. So tell me, what's the financial front line you're fighting on right now? Debt, disorganization, income, or fear? If you want to keep walking beside Pedro and turn this fiction into your blueprint, hit subscribe and stay in the journey. The war doesn't end here, but your strategy can begin. You're back in your own room now. No sirens, no checkpoints, just the quiet hum of your life the way it is today. But Pedro's footsteps are still echoing under your skin. You watched him walk through a war that didn't start with bombs. It started with a late bill, a missing paycheck, an empty pantry, the same kind of small problems that, in your world, show up as credit card interest, overdraft fees, and that sick feeling when you open your banking app. Out there, in that warehouse, Pedro discovered something ugly. Chaos is profitable for someone. Confusion is profitable. Hunger is profitable. And you and you're easier to control when you're desperate. That's why his real escape didn't begin when he ran. It began when he tracked. When he started doing with bullets and crates what most people never do with their own money. Writing it down, connecting the dots, seeing the pattern. You don't live in a war zone. But if you've ever waited for payday like it was rescue, lied to yourself about how it'll all work out, swiped a card hoping it wouldn't be declined, then you already know what it feels like to be surrounded. Pedro's story isn't about becoming rich. It's about refusing to stay blind. He moved from survival mode to strategy, mapping his debt, building a tiny reserve, planning his exit step by step before he ever saw the door. Now it's your turn to step into that role, not as a hero in a movie, as the person who finally decides to stop guessing and start tracking income, expenses, debts, goals. The person who stops feeding someone else's war machine with your stress, your fees, your silence. So let me ask you clearly, what's your biggest financial pain today? The one thing that keeps your mind spinning at night? If you're ready to turn your own battlefield into a map, stay close. In the next stories, we'll turn what Pedro learned under fire into quiet, practical steps you can use in your real life. No drama, no jargon, just structure. Because your freedom may not depend on a border crossing, but it definitely depends on a plan.